everyone, and welcome back to the Wellbeing Training Academy podcast, the place where we talk about all things psychology, leadership, emotional intelligence, and helping you to shape happier, healthier, and more productive workplaces. I'm Abby Twomlow, psychologist, wellbeing trainer, and co-founder of the Wellbeing Training Academy.
And I'm Andrew Farquharson, and I'm all of those things that Abby mentioned. Plus, I'm really excited. I like that introduction because I want to know all about those things.
Well, today we are going to be looking into one of the most important, and I think probably quite misunderstood topics in the workplace. There seems to be a buzzword at the moment, and that's psychological safety. And I think it's a phrase that seems to be big. So you might have heard it. It's become particularly a bit of a buzzword in leadership and HR circles, but we need to talk about what it actually means and more importantly, why you should care about it and why it's important for your organisation. So that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today. So what it really is, why it matters for you, your people in your business, the performance, and how you can start building it in your workplace.
Yeah, and if you don't actually know what psychological safety is, and most people won't, we'll have heard the word perhaps, or the words perhaps, but just think of it like this. If you're part of a team, um, what's the best team you've ever worked with? What made it good? Was it all of the talented people there? Well, that helps probably. But more importantly, it was the feeling that you had when you went into the room, the connection you had with the other members of the team, how you felt comfortable or valued or completely safe to speak your mind, that you wouldn't be sort of thought you might be ridiculed or bullied. And this is what psychological safety is. And it's really important. It's perhaps the single most important factor in building high power, high performing, innovative teams. And that's what we're going to look at today.
Yeah, I mean, when we think of any kind of safety, if you compare it to physical safety is keeping you from harm, isn't it? And psychological safety is keeping you safe from, I guess, shame or guilt. Um, which is really important because when people feel safe, they're much more likely to do all of those things that you just said, aren't they? They're much more likely to be creative, um, talk about issues that they have before they escalate, ask for help when they need it, and own up to mistakes rather than hide from them. But I think when that psychological safety is missing, and I think it quite often is missing, people go quiet. They play it safe and then they stop doing things. They start avoiding, don't they? Because they they have this fear or this guilt.
Mhm. Yeah. And in effect, as you say, the reason why it matters is very often in situations, in a team situation in particular, but it can also be if you're an individual and you start to talk to other people, you can start to feel this feeling of lack of psychological safety. Imagine your work environment that is without this safety. People are focused on self-preservation. They might keep quiet in meetings or just nod along, follow instructions, even if they notice there's a huge problem or this can lead to difficulties later on. The other thing is that it's not just about being nice, it's about business results. It's about everybody working together. If you think of it as a car, a business as a car works best when all of the individual parts are working in harmony with each other. If one or more parts are not working in harmony, then the car doesn't function properly or it doesn't even work at all. So, and it's the same with a business. So this sort of psychological safety business is not just a nice thing. There's been quite a lot of studies done. They found that psychological safety is the number one predictor of a team's success. It outranks skill, seniority, workload, effort, all that sort of thing. Um, it's actually something that is needed for a business to innovate and thrive and flourish. So that's why it matters.
And like you say, there's a lot of research that backs this up, and the research is crystal clear, isn't it? That teams that have got high psychological safety consistently outperform those that don't. And have you come across Google's Project Aristotle?
I have heard of it and seen it, yes.
Yeah, so this is one of the largest studies that's ever been done on team performance, and it found that psychological safety was the number one factor that sets successful teams apart. And you can't ignore that, can you? We can't ignore that. It's a huge study that's been done by Google. It's not like a small scale thing. It's massive, and it was clear that that makes a huge difference, not only to well-being. It's not about staff well-being. It's about team performance as well, like you said. Um, and obviously, there's then the personal side of that as well, because people grow better. Stress is reduced, burnout's reduced. So if we're talking about how to get a team functioning better, how to get better productivity from your team, take more initiative, speak up more, manage their stress better, the answer always kind of comes back to this, doesn't it? It always comes back to psychological safety, because if that's not there, that's the building block, isn't it? That's the foundation. Um, it, it's not about making a business soft. It's not about having yoga Fridays or free fruit particularly. It's about creating a workplace where people can do their best thinking, I guess. So, yeah, what does that look like in action? What does it look like in real life?
Yeah, well, the thing is, what's it look like in real life? Well, people that don't really understand or re know about psychological safety are usually the people that don't think it's worth anything. It's just a nice thing to have. It's a fluffy sort of thing that doesn't have any depth or content to it. And the thing is about there's a lot of misconception that is around this. It doesn't mean, as I said earlier, it doesn't mean that you're nice all the time. It doesn't mean you avoid tough conversations or constructive criticism. In fact, it's the opposite. Uh, if you feel psychologically safe in your work environment, you'll feel encouraged to deliver and receive honest feedback without fear of people thinking you're an idiot or reprisal or something like that. It leads to healthy debate. It's also not a personality thing. It's not about whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, or it's about a team environment, a team climate, if you want, that can share beliefs and they spark ideas. But the only way that that can really happen is if you feel safe in that group.
Like you
And
say,
it's
it's
also
about
not about,
being able to speak up as well, isn't it?
yeah,
I know that in my career before this, one of the reasons that I left was because I didn't have this. When I look at this now, I can see exactly what was missing from my career. And, I didn't feel like I could ask for help without being utterly shamed or sort of. I can remember once something new came in and I said, I'm struggling with this a little bit. I don't really understand it. And that's it. I was almost like taken back to being a student where I was babysat and made to feel like I was a complete and utter idiot, that I just, that I'd not understood something. And that is not psychological safety. You should be able to ask for help, admit mistakes, um, without being sort of punished or ridiculed or persecuted even, because I think that's a big thing, isn't it? Shame and guilt. So people then don't say anything and they go on struggling, and then that's when the productivity takes a nosedive. But if you're in a meeting and you flag up a mistake, if you're getting a response like, oh, thanks for flagging it up early, let's see what we can do about it, you're going to feel safe saying things like that. Or, you should be able to say, I don't know, or I need some help, and get some good feedback or get some good support that's not just making you feel like you're not doing a good job.
yeah,
I guess that's what it looks like in real life, isn't it? And it should be a two-way process as well, because I think if you have got, I mean, feedback in particular should be a two-way process. So I think leaders who model this themselves, um, who admit mistakes, who ask questions, who ask for honest feedback, are much more open to doing that, being both ways. And I think when there's that mutual respect and it flows down, that's when it becomes successful, isn't it?
That fear of looking incompetent, making a mistake, that just shuts down the whole process. It doesn't allow a business to grow. And I suppose you could say at the core of psychological safety, it addresses four fears that we have. The fear of being seen as ignorant by asking questions. Now, I was in a previous life as well. When I was at university, I decided that when I went into tutorials, that if I didn't understand something, I would ask a question. I didn't care if it was a daft or seemed on the face of it a daft question. And actually, I had one of the areas, I had a really good tutor. And afterwards, he came and said, thanks for asking the question, because he could guarantee, and I later found out this was true, that a good half of the other people in the group had the same question, but didn't want to ask it in case they appeared to be stupid or something like that. So it helped, and so that was good. The thing about mistakes, the fear of incompetent, that's one of the others. Um, New person in the group, fear of being intrusive, saying something you would, well, I know I'm a new person, etc. You might bring a fresh idea, a great idea. You should have the safety and freedom to feel that you can do that. And also, like the fear of being seen as negative, voicing a dissent or saying, well, hang on a minute, can we work through that a bit more? Or what does that actually mean?
Okay, so so let's get practical about it, and talk about some strategies, I suppose, because it's all right, good, it's all right talking the talk, isn't it? And knowing that that's important, but how can people actually look at their business, look at their team, and measure or put things in place to help with this? So let's have a look at some evidence-based strategies to help leaders and organizations to build this psychological safety. And we'll assume that they have none. Let's start from the ground up. So something that I've already touched on, or one of my first things I would say is be modeling that openness and that fallibility, I guess. So if you want people to be honest with you, show them that it's okay to not have all the answers and not be perfect themselves. So saying things like, well, I might get this wrong, but actually this is what I'm thinking, or that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about it from that angle, because it creates that space and that area of comfort for others to contribute without fear of being wrong, like you've just said. I think when people worry about being wrong or incompetent, that's when people get silent. And really, it's anxiety in disguise, isn't it?
Yeah.
When people are quiet, I think that's anxiety in disguise because they're worried about getting things wrong. Um, have you got a tip to add in?
Well, I just saying that, and it sort of follows on with that, but this all comes from leadership. And the vulnerability of the leader or the manager, team leader, whoever it might be, they can show that. And a lot of people think vulnerability is a weakness, but actually it's a strength because it shows that one, I'm human, but secondly, I understand what the thoughts and feelings that everybody else in the group are having because I'm having them.
Mhm.
Um, and so let's have a look at mistakes. Let's see what didn't quite work out and what we might be able to do better next time. Because if you find something that doesn't work out, that's actually a positive because it didn't work out. So you can go and work on something that did, as opposed to keep banging your head trying to make it a success. I was just going to say, I know I mentioned in the other podcasts that we've done about the Finnish Day of Mistakes, where universities celebrate mistakes. that students, the staff, everybody have made, because that's a learning point. It's
Yeah, and I
something,
think that was kind of a point that I was going to make is almost respond constructively to mistakes. But I think the best way of doing that is by admitting that you make mistakes yourself. And if you've got a leader that responds to a mistake with blame or frustration, then people won't risk admitting mistakes again. And like you said, there's a lot to be learned from mistakes. Mistakes are how we learn, how we grow. They're part of human, human thinking. And nothing has been successful without mistakes. So if you shift that tone from blame to curious, well, let's have a look at what's happened. What can we do differently next time? Not only does it create a feeling of trust, but it actually accelerates learning, it accelerates progress as well, doesn't it? And people feel more open-minded and will look at things with different perspectives when they feel they're allowed to do that.
yeah. And you can make that into a formal thing or an informal thing, like a learning review where you whether things have worked out really well or things that you think could be done better, etc.
Yeah.
Um, you can just have a look, see what went right. What have we learned from that? If we were to do the process again, would we do it any differently? You know,
And these aren't, like you said, they're not structured things, are they? These are just healthy habits to have in your day to day, the way that you ask open-ended questions. Um, and that's not even about mistakes, just generally asking open-ended question. Well, what are your thoughts on this? We haven't heard from such and such. What do you think about it? And getting people involved and noticing people. And like you say, if you're a leader that just is a human being, that's openly a human being that makes mistakes and cares about people, then you're in the right place, aren't you? Those are the most effective kind of leaders with the best kind of team because people feel like they can trust them.
yeah, and that's right. And that again, because if you like the contrast, if you're a leader, you can start to listen to understand when somebody's talking. Uh, that means not sort of diving in with some counter argument or trying to put forward your plan or whatever. Listen, even if the plan doesn't sound that great to your mind, you can say, well, it's an interesting idea. What's your reasoning? How do you see that working? So that you can work with it, as opposed to putting somebody down, oh, that's rubbish, that will never work.
Yeah. I think one of the tips that I quite like to give sometimes, and it ties in with that, is don't just recognize and reward success either. I think actually, if you can recognize and reward courage
Mm,
and respond well when people speak up, even if it's not the best answer, if you're listening to people to understand rather than just respond, you will listen when somebody shares feedback or they share a challenge or they talk about a mistake. And even if you're just saying something as like, I really appreciate you speaking up about that, it goes a long way, doesn't it?
yes.
Instead of just like, all right, okay, move on to the next person, because that person feels heard and therefore they feel valued, even if nothing happens with that idea. Just being heard goes a long way. Um, and it reinforces that they're free to give their ideas as well. So it kind of keeps that backed up. And it's so simple. It's so simple to do that, isn't it?
Hmm.
It's just,
Yeah.
I think it is an active process and it's almost a habit that needs building. And habits take practice. You need to do them consistently. So you might need to work at them actively to start with. But the more you do that, the more ingrained it becomes, and it just becomes part of your culture and what you do. And that's, I think, the important thing.
Yeah.
Um, so before we wrap up, I'd like to just tackle a quick myth and about psychological safety, because psychological safety does not mean that everybody always has to agree and never has to fall out and there's never any conflict. It's not about being nice all the time because that's unrealistic as well. And again, if you're trying to build that business where everybody's smiling, oh yeah, that's great all the time, you've then still got those people that are quietly in the background disagreeing and don't feel free to voice their opinion. So I think it's really important that psychological safety isn't always about being nice and agreeing with everybody. It's about being constructive in any conflict, really, doing it well, where people can disagree with each other respectfully but still feel valued. Um, because actually conflict's still important sometimes. If it's done well, it has a good impact on your business. You can grow, you can innovate, you can sort of disperse tension in a healthy way. So it's not about lowering your standards. It's about removing fear so that people can meet higher standards, really. So yeah, let's round up, I suppose. Psychological safety is the basis of a successful business. It's the foundation of trust. It's about communication. It's about high performance because if you have a team that feels safe, they're going to speak up. They're going to be more creative. They're going to be more motivated. They're going to work better together. And as a leader, it's your job to ensure that this is in place. Your influence and your impact of psychological safety is massive. Every interaction, every conversation, every thank you, every how you doing today are all creating that ethos, that climate for your team where they feel safe.
Psychological safety is not a soft skill. It might appear it, like all these so-called soft skills. It's a it's a foundation, it's a hard foundation of your organization's excellence and productivity and growth. And people who feel safe in themselves do all of the things that you mentioned earlier. They feel safe to ask a question. They feel safe to say, well, it didn't quite work out. Um, and they feel safe to take risks and challenge. And they bring, in effect, sort of, they increase the intelligence of the organization in every aspect. If you're a leader or a manager of a team, it's your job to move your culture, your team culture, from perhaps one of fear and reticence to say things and silence to one of courage and learning and to do things. So if you would like to know how to do some of these things to train, please do get in touch, wellbeingtrainingacademy.com, and we'd love to hear from you. Anyway, I'll say bye-bye for now.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Take care of yourself. Bye.